Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Brandy Oliver, and I am an associate professor at Butler University, and I am working alongside Dr. Carlin Titchener, and I'm very excited today to share some information with you around educator wellness, specifically just remembering or helping us to maybe pause and remember how important it is to take time for ourselves and to really make it a priority of our own self-care and wellness. So I'm going to share some slides with you today. Technology. We love technology, right? One moment, bear with me. All right, here we go. Now it's going to share. So I'm going to go ahead and do full screen so you can see the slide decks easier. And so this was developed, and then I also had it on Pear Deck. So you'll see some interactive slides. And of course, because I'm not with you, you're not going to be able to have the opportunity to do that interactively, but I'll kind of talk through what I'm hoping you'll do during those interactive slides on your own. So really, the importance of what we're here together is like, so what are we going to talk about today? Kind of the understanding of mental health and well-being, why it's so important to take time for yourself. And then there's been developed a wellness model. So it's called U-Prep Team, specifically for you and your school. And so I'll walk through the different components of that model, and each of the letters is an acronym for a part of that wellness model. And so I just hope that as you're reviewing this, that you take some time to engage in this work, take some time to reflect on what this means to you. Hopefully you can stay present. I know sometimes we have a lot of distractions that come our way, but the nice thing about a recorded video session is you can hit pause and hopefully come back to it when you find yourself some available time. And then I just always want to prioritize and emphasize how important it is to show ourselves kindness, to show ourselves grace. I think sometimes it's easy because our jobs as educators is to be there for others and to sometimes put others first, which is important at times, but not always. And so just give yourself grace like you tend to probably give your students and your colleagues. Remember, you need to be kind to yourself as well. So I know that some of you have maybe seen this wellness, kind of thinking about this continuum of wellness. And we have on the left, if you think about battery charge, right? So sometimes I know I look at my battery on my laptop or maybe my iPhone, I see like it's the little red thing is like saying you're going to lose everything if you don't get it hooked up to a battery, or you're not going to be able to make that call if you're in a car. So that red is kind of thinking about you're in crisis. Right now, I'm not able to really focus. I'm feeling exhausted. Maybe you're noticing weight loss, weight gain, very low mood, just kind of sometimes a sense of hopelessness. So that's kind of that left end of the continuum spectrum. And then we have struggling. And so still feeling some anxious. So notice that maybe you're having some absenteeism, not really wanting to go to work or feel like that's a place that you can thrive. Poor sleep, poor appetite, feeling some depression. And then we have in the middle this yellow, which is I'm surviving, right? So it's not this all the way in the red, not feeling the worst ever, but I'm also not all the way in the green, feeling like things are just amazing. So still some sense of worriedness, some irritability that you notice, more withdrawn than typical for yourself, feeling kind of on edge, right? A sense of tenseness. And then we have thriving, which is that light green. So you're feeling calm, able to engage, able to sleep, engaged, enjoy others, right? Or enjoy the socialization of others, able to focus, and you're able to be responsive and not just come out in a reactive mode. And then we have the far green, which is excelling, like life is awesome. I'm just feeling great. I've got energy and passion and enthusiasm. I'm really able to see and realize my full potential. I have a sense of purposefulness, right? I know my mission, I'm driven, and I have a sense of optimism. So that's kind of this spectrum or continuum that I'd like you to think about. So if you were to hit pause right now and say, where am I today? Where am I in this moment? Am I feeling like I just can't survive this? I can't keep up this pace. Something's just not quite right. Like I'm okay, but there's still something a little bit off, or I got this, right? Or I just love what I do. Where would you put yourself right now in the very moment that we're having this conversation? So as you were thinking about that, I think it's important to reflect on what were the words that came to your mind. as you placed yourself in one of these different categories? Was it the words of, I'm doing okay, like I can get through this, I am feeling good about where I am, I have colleagues that support me? Or if maybe some things that were going through your mind where, I'm not sleeping very well, I have a hard time shutting down my mind at night, I tend to not always want to be around others or my typical social um, events. I kind of either I go to, but I go reluctantly, or I end up leaving early because I'm worried about what I haven't yet done. So what were some of those things as you placed yourself in one of these categories? It's important that we start noticing how we think about ourselves and what those thoughts were as we were engaging in where to place ourselves on this continuum of wellness. So another thing I think it's important as you are kind of thinking and have this mindset is what does fill your bucket? Like what makes a smile come to your face? Is it a conversation with a colleague? Is it conversations with your students and hearing about their days and hearing about their successes? Is it a simple, wonderful cup of coffee in the morning or something, right? So what fills your bucket today? And then what is it that's draining it? If you were to be able to identify that, what's draining your bucket? So again, I want you to take some time and think about this. And if you need to, just hit that pause button on this presentation and kind of really reflect and engage with this question. So I am a big proponent of making sure that when we use terminology, no matter if it's around wellness, around social emotional learning, around culturally responsive practices, diversity, equity, inclusion, differentiated instruction, it doesn't matter what it is, right? Sometimes we tend to use words without giving clear definition of what I mean by that word. And so I make an assumption, which can be dangerous, if I think everyone knows what I'm talking about, or they think that the meaning is the same as I define it. So in this work, I hope that you and your colleagues discuss, what does the term mental health mean to you? What does the term mental well-being mean to you, or overall well-being? And so I think sometimes we know from literature and from research that the term mental health often will resonate as mental illness or something's wrong, or it has some stigma associated with it. So it's really important, as you can see in this first bullet, is there are many facets to contribute to one's mental health, right? So it is the way that we view our life, the values that we hold, our worldviews, that does very much vary across our cultures, our backgrounds, our identities. And how we understand well-being also reflects this range of our human experience. So my background, my current, my social circles, my mental well-being, how I view that, my spiritual well-being, how I have access to material resources or I don't have access to material resources. All of these are components of one's mental health and well-being. So it's a very layered and complex topic. And that's why I encourage you all to come up with your own definitive ways of explaining and talking about these terms. So if, again, you can break this down, as I said, it's layered, but I tried to take kind of 5 chunks that kind of do make up an aspect of mental health and well-being for, I would say, for most of us. There is an aspect of this material well-being, right? I need to know that I have stable employment, that I am going to have a paycheck to be able to pay my bills. That makes me feel like a sense of well-being. I have access to resources. I know I can come home and I'm going to have a roof over my head. I'm not going to have a fear of being evicted or someone is going to be there that's unsafe. So all of these pieces are around material well-being. It doesn't mean I'm hyper focused on material objects. It's just I have what I need to survive, right? And to do well beyond surviving. So beyond that yellow, I'm able to get into the green zone because I don't have to have that one thing to worry me all the time. And then we have a social well-being, and that means we have healthy relationships, friendships, peer relations. We don't have a lot of conflict within family that's causing those extra stressors. We have harmony in our community, and that our community members are willing to come together and to intervene to resolve any problems and issues. So we're working towards and working together in a collaborative spirit. And then there's a sense of security. So going back with material well-being, not only do I have a roof over my head, but as I said, I can go home and not feel like I'm going to be unsafe, not feeling that there's going to be threats or that there's crime, because that also puts a huge stressor, right? Can cause that chronic and ongoing stress. I have the ability to freely move and visit any part of my neighborhood or my community that I would like without feeling like someone's going to be suspicious of me, or without the fear of oppression or discrimination. So that's another sense of security. And then I have a protection from natural disasters and conflicts. Now, again, just because these are the things I'm talking about doesn't mean that it's an all exhaustive list. There's other things that would fit in all of these domains as well. And then there's a sense of physical well-being. So I know I have had illnesses in the past, and that really takes me out of everything, right? Like I'm not able to go to work. I had to take some leave for a while. And so those are things like when our physical well-being is not at its capacity, 100% capacity, it does impact our mental wellness and our overall well-being. So do I have access to quality healthcare? Do I have access to healthy foods? Am I getting adequate sleep? Am I able to get some exercise in places like if I want to go outside again, I feel safe. I have spaces that are free and open to the public. It doesn't mean I have to work out an hour a day at some rigorous gym. It just means I'm able to go out and get some regular exercise. And then this last area is spiritual and mental well-being. So feeling free to practice any religion or spiritual beliefs, having an overall general positive outlook on life, feeling that you can live with courage, be who you are, explore your identity development, have self-initiative, be able to persist, drive, and have an aspect of resiliency as life does have its ups and downs and throw some challenges your way. So if we think about those aspects, and like I said, as I was talking through them, you may have been thinking of other things that fit in those areas, which is wonderful. But we do know that there's different threats to one's mental health and well-being. And it can range from community violence to poverty, work stress. There could become toxic stress, trauma, alcoholism, addiction, and inequity, right? So I put inequitable policies, but any kind of inequities or lack of access, exclusion, isolation. We all are really still working through the pandemic. So it can be what we're working through right now with COVID, but there's other, like how disease, right? So if you get sick or you're battling a chronic illness, or maybe a family member, right? So these all definitely are threats to one's mental health and well-being. Racial discrimination, natural disasters, if there's turmoil with friends or family. And then I have down here this media negative perception, which has really been weighing on my mind quite a bit with the sense of what we do as educators. I find it very challenging to turn on a news channel and hear often the negativity that is being spoken around educators when I know the level of work and time and attention and care and concern that goes into every day that you go to work, and to turn on the news and feel that it's just constantly being bombarded with a negative attitude and no appreciation can really also take a toll on one's mental health. And then you also may have others that are coming up for you. So again, this is not an exhaustive list. So you might think about what are those things that are a threat to your own mental health and well-being. So if you take a second, think about of the threats that I have listed, maybe ones that you've thought of, what would you deem are the top two that really most impact your overall mental health and well-being? So we transition into why is it important to take time for yourself? So let's think about that. There's a cost of the profession of teaching, of being an educator. We know that we are around a lot of different people each and every day, from students, from family members of those students, to community that might be in our schools, to our colleagues. And in those situations and in those discussions, sometimes we are hearing stories of experiences that are traumatic, right? So whether it be our own traumatic experiences that we're going through or that of others, it does have a cost. So this circle over here talks about the effects of secondary trauma. And so you're going to see some of these pop up in the next slide or two as well. So just be thinking about when you kind of go home at night and you've had a hard day and you've been there to be caring and compassionate to a student that's maybe shared some things or that has just maybe acted out, right? And you're like, have a hunch it's past trauma that's really the behaviors that you're seeing. I'm going to guess that you go home and you might have that physical feeling, right? You're fatigued, you've got lower energy. Maybe that's the evening that you're supposed to do something socially and you're like, you know, I just don't have it in me tonight to go do X, Y, or Z. So these are just some things that you might start to notice that is definitely a cost of caring within our profession. So this is an interesting, diagram. When we think about what we all have experienced over the last around 18 months or so with the pandemic, when that all hit back in, was it March of 2020-ish, February maybe? I know there's this like, okay, what's going to happen? Some people were getting sick. We were hearing a little bit more about it. And then I would say most of us around the March time, if not early April, we were feeling the events, right? Many schools were shutting down, businesses were shutting down. It felt just really odd. So we're in that phase. And then we're noticing like this heroic phase, and we're all like, all right, we're doing this, right? We're gonna get on Zoom, we're gonna learn how to do different technologies, and we're gonna figure this out. And so kind of maybe your mood, your optimism level, it picks back up, right? So we kind of in this honeymoon phase. And then I think what I have noticed, and I would say for myself personally, and just my work with different schools, is once we thought we had some momentum about this, like, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing, I figured this out, then it would be like one more wave, right? One more spike. And then we're okay, that wasn't working, and a shift in policies or a shift in procedures. And that takes a serious toll on everyone. And so we think about our bucket being full. It's hard to even get your bucket back to halfway, right? Because as soon as you start to feel like you're going back up, another new thing and another new thing, or maybe you have a family member that gets sick. So you can see down here, it's like up to 5 years after this trauma response happens. And so just be mindful that this is something we're all learning, and we're doing this together. And I'm thinking we're in that rebuilding, reconstruction, and reinventing phase, which does have some excitement because I think we have learned some great lessons from what we've all experienced. But I do want you to be mindful that sometimes it does feel like you're shifting back and forth and feeling like I've got this, okay, maybe I don't. So just be patient and be kind to yourself, and show yourself some grace, as we all are continuously learning together throughout this. So talking about secondary trauma, sometimes because of that, we tend to notice that our compassion, our levels of empathy might be dwindling, right? Because we are at a low. And so our battery levels are low. And so some personal impacts of compassion fatigue would be these things that you've probably noticed in the wheel, right? Difficulty concentrating. Maybe we notice we're a little bit more irritable, and that could be both, at school, but definitely what I would notice when I needed to take some time for myself is I might be on at work with my students, with my colleagues, and then I would come home, and I have 4 children, and I was so quick to snap with them, right? Like my patience was done. I was irritable, I was moody. And that's when I have to step back and say, okay, my family comes first. I truly believe that. I say that, but yet my actions didn't match my behavior. And so what does that look like, right? So that's when I need to say, whoa. I need to really focus on me for a little bit, build myself back up so I can not only be healthy and inviting and warm and engaging at work with my peers and my students, but I need to be that way with my own family, right? The people that I love most dearly in life. So it's just something to be thinking about. Everybody has different triggers and warning signs. So just kind of notice that. Professionally, it also, right? So your temperament might look like that way at work. You might notice that you've missed some deadlines. Maybe you don't feel super flexible like you used to be, like, okay, yeah, I can be flexible. And you kind of feel a little more rigid. Noticing some performance has decreased. Maybe just the way that you want to interact with your colleagues is different, right? You don't nearly have as much patience. You seem to even withdraw maybe from things that you used to enjoy at work. And so now that you're no longer enjoying them, you find yourself kind of grumbling, like, I can't believe we have to do this, where maybe at one point it was fun to see your colleagues, even in an after school meeting setting, and now you just don't have any patience or really time to engage in that work. So again, this looks different for everyone, but as you start to notice little things, say, okay, this might be what's happening. It's just, I need to step back and fill my bucket, right? To really notice that I'm really fatigued in my area to give and show compassion and empathy. Another aspect of compassion fatigue is this silencing response. And this is something I don't think that we talk about nearly enough. And it really is just like that inability to even want to sit and listen, right? Like, I just don't have it in me. And it's not because you don't care. It's not because you're a bad person, but you just are at empty. right? You are really in that in crisis. So this would be when you typically would see a student in need or need of extra support in the, when you are at a place of able to operate, even surviving and on up, you would be able to engage and do so with an open heart and wanting to really help that student. But maybe if you're in this silencing response stage, your mind saying that student just needs to get over it. Or maybe like, I just want the student out of my room. Like it's a relief when they're not there, right? So when you're hearing yourself say those things, whether it's out loud or just in your own head, that might be another really good sign for you to step back and check and see where you are. And then you can see some other ones, right? So if you start to tend to use more sarcasm or humor, which is minimizing someone's experience, you're really not able to believe students' stories, right? And kind of more blaming or shaming. These are all things to be worried and kind of, again, noticing for yourself. And before we move on, I want to say, so also now that you're learning about these impacts of compassion fatigue, if you notice these signs in your colleagues, it's really important to step in and help them get the support that they need so that they can become, again, kind of filled up and their batteries can get charged. So I just want to read this quote. Our way of being in the world of the classroom, whether we are being peace or being impatience, being respect or being condescension, being awareness or being numb, will ultimately determine how safe and open students will feel when we invite them to explore deep matters. So we all have a purpose of teaching and helping our students grow. And so I think this quote, I really like it because the way we are being with each other, the way we are being with our students, the way that we present ourselves is either going to be inviting for those conversations and for deep learning, or it's going to completely shut down the opportunity for our students to highly engage with us. So I don't know if anyone of you that are watching this has ever seen this little pie chart over here, but I always think it's interesting because we talk about happiness quite a bit. I just want to be happy, feeling happy and joy. So what's that even look like, right? So if we think about what determines happiness, there's been some studies. And so we think about this in this pie chart manner. So 50% is genetics. And then the other 50%, you can see 10 is circumstances. So what life throws our way. But really, we have quite a bit of control in our happiness, right? So 40% is our own actions, our own responses to life circumstances. And so I think it's important that we start to remember that yes, all of this that's happening right now is really challenging. We have a shortage of substitute teachers. I have a school that their transportation department has constantly been going on walkouts. And so it's really, kids aren't being able to get to school. So it's just this constant like battle, right? So we can't control that. We can't control if teachers walk out, if transportation walk out, if our parents get angry with us, if our students come to school frustrated. We can't control any of that. What we can control is the way we respond, our actions, our behaviors towards those events. And part of doing that is being your authentic self. And so I think that that's something that we have to also be willing, and this is Brene Brown's work, be vulnerable, right? To be able to show that we aren't always going to do the right thing. And when we don't do the right thing, or we are a little snippy or a little irritable, we're willing to say, you know what, I'm sorry. I was just not in the right headspace. I had started my day out wrong. I need to come back to you and I want to apologize. And I really do want to hear what you had to share with me, right? Or something like that. But that takes an authenticity and it takes vulnerability to really be able to do those things, right? So thinking about how you exercise compassion, right? And knowing that it all is coming from this place of strength and struggle. Like, yes, I've struggled too. Today's a good day. I'm in the strength day. I'm in the green zone. But tomorrow, maybe you're not going to be there, right? So owning all of those components, I think that's really important. So just really trying to be your authentic self in all of these situations. So thinking about happiness, sometimes you might think, what will make me happy? And sometimes some common things are, I need a new relationship. I need to lose weight. If only I had more money, I'd be happy. If only I could freeze time, which I know I have said that a few times. If I could travel to a warm climate, or if I could travel overseas, or I could take, if I just had a little bit better health, all these things would make me happy. But in reality, that's just a snippet, right? I'm not saying that, yeah, I'd love to travel. Of course, like that would make me happy, maybe in the moment, but it's not going to cure the low nature of where I'm feeling compassion fatigue. It's not going to have that sustainable happiness. So what we want to think about is, where can you make some small differences, some small steps, and that is in the way that you respond in your actions to really fulfill happiness and to build that happiness over time. Didn't want to change. There we go. Oh. So if we think about that, just small changes, right? Incremental changes. I think sometimes what we talk about self-care or self-care action plans, and it feels like another to-do list. And if we're already feeling a little depleted, asking to create this huge to-do list just seems like there's no way it's going to be possible, right? So just one small thing, some little small habit, a minute a day, 2 minutes a day, but making it a priority. So I think it's really important if we think about scaffolding in education, that's exactly what we're talking about here. How can we take one small effort, get some achievement, get some momentum, and just chunk it out little by little, and then that will have a longer impact on your happiness. So to transition, my slide deck's not wanting to cooperate with me right now. This is interesting. So I apologize about that. So this is the U Prep team model. And so if we think about what this educator wellness model looks like, I'm going to go through the U, PREP, TEAM, and talk about each component. It has been based on Martin Seligman's PERMA model. And so this comes from literature, it comes from a research background. It's not just something I've made up on my own. So I just wanted to share with you, there is a basis for this framework. So the U is unite. So I think it's important in our journeys that we come together with like-minded people, that we find together a supportive group network that we can talk with, that we can be truly vulnerable, we can be authentic with. And also sometimes it's nice to have that accountability person, right? So I say my goal this week is to do 5 minutes of mindfulness a day. At the end of the week, I can check in with my accountability buddy and say, you know, I did it 3 days, but I didn't do it all 5 days, and there's no shame, right? So that we just have a conversation about it, but I do have some accountability with someone that is also on this journey to work towards better wellness and better self-care. The first, so P is, there we go, positivity. And this is not just looking at life and everything is great, right? That's not what I'm talking about. That's actually toxic positivity. It's just being upbeat and optimistic when we are faced with struggles and challenges. Knowing that we need to be authentic and vulnerable in those moments, but also not letting us take us to the low of lows, taking us to that sense of hopelessness, being able to acknowledge, yeah, this is tough, this is difficult, but I do know I've got personal strengths that I can use to get through this. I can be resilient. And so I think that that's a huge piece of this positivity. Also helping become aware of our automatic negative thinking. I call them ants. And so if you remember back a few slides ago, I asked you to think about what are the thoughts that come to your mind when you were selecting your continuous on the continuum of wellness. And those are important, right? So did you have thoughts that were like, I can't do this? This isn't important, right? So that would be like automatic negative thinking. So become aware of your own thought style and the own thoughts that pop up. So catch them, check them, and then correct if need be. So here, I think it's important that we are able to recognize our personal strengths. So if you would take a moment and jot down 6 of your personal strengths that you bring with you into your work life, into your personal life, but just being able to identify those and maybe jot them down, put them on your desk, put them on a sticky note somewhere where you can see them each day. But what are 6 strengths that you know you own and that you utilize on a regular basis? This next, so we've had the U and the P, so we're in the R, thinking about relationships. So again, knowing that we are social creatures. We are not hardwired to be alone or be in isolation. We need to be with others. So do you take time to have, fun activities with other people? You make time for the significant people in your life, whether that be friendships, family, religious aspects, community involvement, whatever it is that brings you joy. Are you taking time to truly engage with others and have those relational activities? So E is for emotions, and just really being able to step back and really check our own emotional awareness. So often we tend to use very similar feeling words, and we have maybe a stunted emotional vocabulary. So it's important that we start to think about our own emotional awareness and what emotions that we commonly name, and then maybe try to include and grow your emotional vocabulary. So is it that you were mad, or was it you were frustrated, irritated, embarrassed? Sometimes even worry might come out as mad, and you're like, okay, maybe it wasn't really mad, I was worried, and that's why I responded or reacted that way. But help to grow your own emotional vocabulary is really important as we develop our own emotional awareness. And then being able to identify when we start to feel dysregulated, what are some healthy coping strategies that we can use to become to that place of calm, to become more regulated, because we can't engage with our students if we're dysregulated, and we need to be able to continuously model healthy coping strategies with them. So this next P is physical well-being. So I talked a little about this. This is not about going on a diet or having to exercise at a gym. This is just making sure that you're taking time to eat your lunch, right? Or you're taking time to have some sort of physical activity, noticing the amount of sleep that you get. We know that so many times sleep is the first thing that people tend to give up. But it's really important that we get our sleep, because that helps our physical well-being to be able to do all these other things that we're talking about. So just noticing, and maybe even start to document your own sleep patterns, are your nutrition schedule, are you getting healthy foods, or because you're so quick paced and have to go here, there, and there, are you grabbing more snack foods or junk foods? And so that also can impact your ability to feel like you have the energy and the enthusiasm to do this work. So T, thinking about team, is just being thankful, right? So much. I love all the newer research that we have around gratitude. And so just taking a moment and thinking about what is great about today. What am I thankful for? Acknowledging that we are thankful for things that we do. Like, what is it that, I'm really glad I had the opportunity to do that. That makes me feel good, right? But also then being grateful for others and what we have in our lives. So it's really important that we take some time and really are showing this deeper appreciation for the work that we do, for the other people in our lives, and just to kind of notice those things. So again, I am not going to pause for 3 minutes, but I would encourage you to hit the pause button and take around 3 minutes and just really reflect about right now, today, what are 3 great things, good things that have happened today? And then if we were together, I would have you share one of those with the group. But just take time, and it can be something small, but what are you grateful for that has happened today? And write down those 3 things. So next is this E, it's engagement. And so this is being able to feel like you can be fully present and focused at the task at hand. Also, so often, because our brains are hardwired to look for some negativity and some warning signs and danger, we tend to overlook and not focus on when really good things are happening. And so how can you stop and savor when maybe a student has had a success? Maybe when someone has come to you and shared a moment of gratitude with you, how can you really take that in, right? That's engaging in the situation, increasing your flow. And it does contribute to just a greater sense of well-being, and it makes us happier. It does increase our happiness level. Achievement. So I think we all like to feel like our work is valued by others and a sense of accomplishment. So are we setting goals to be successful? Sometimes it's important to kind of step back and say, like, what is really manageable? What is something that's realistic that I feel like I can accomplish? And also around that, then when you've done that, is to set some really strong personal and professional boundaries. So how can you, I always say, do you need to schedule time for this work, this important educator wellness self-care work? Just like you schedule meetings, just like you schedule doctor's appointments, it's important. So maybe put a reminder on your phone that says, hey, this is my 5 minutes, or this is my 10 minutes, or whatever you decide is best for yourself. But also then just having that sense of accomplishment is also important to our overall well-being and our happiness. And then last is mindfulness. And that is a great practice to get into, being able to stay in the present moment. And it does take practice. This is not something that I think comes easy or natural to most people. I know it didn't for myself. It's taken several years for me to really engage and just love doing this, but it's an important part of my world. Every day I dedicate amount of time to being mindful through meditation, through visual imagery, through progressive muscle relaxation. I do a variety of different things through prayer. So it's different for everyone, but I think it's important that you find what works best for you. It does not have to be breathing exercises. It could be any other, again, like just noticing a body scan, that's being mindful, noticing what you're feeling in the very moment. So just do these practices until something feels that it fits for your own personality. And so I have a video. So just this is, and again, if you've not had a chance, there's some really great research around there that we know teaching is stressful, more so now than ever. And so just really being able to engage in mindfulness has been a great way for stress reduction, to build community, to help avoid burnout, to help avoid that compassion fatigue that we talked about, and to really have healthier student relationships. So I'm going to share this video because I know I did not hit the share of my audio. So if even I hit the play button, it's not going to really share the video with you. So I will put this link to this really short, I think it's about 1.5 minutes, I think 2 minutes, but it's a breathe, and it just talks a little bit about mindful breathing, and then it has you practice a really simple breathing exercise. It does not mean you have to have a yoga mat. It just means being aware of your breath. So I will share this link with the presentation. And really, this is the end, my last slide. Again, going back to, we don't have to set a 10-step goals action plan. It's just one small thing. So what is that for you? Is it a body scan? Is it a mindful walk? Is it a 1-minute meditation? Maybe it's just making sure you take a lunch break, right, every day. Maybe it is you really enjoy speaking with one of your colleagues, so you'd like to make sure you have 5 minutes just to check in with that person. Whatever it is that is good for you, please, I encourage you to try that. I also just wanted to say that this is really kind of an overview of our Educator Wellness series. And so within that UPrep team Educator Wellness framework, we will go deeper in many of those components, right? To kind of talk more about what does flow mean? What does it mean savorings? What does achievement? What are personal strengths? So we'll take time to dive into each of these. But for the sake of this first session, we just really want to give you kind of an overview of mental health and well-being. Hopefully I have convinced you that this is important for you to do for yourself. And then just to give you a really big snapshot of the UPrep team Educator Wellness framework. So again, I hope all of you take some time for yourselves, and especially now we have Thanksgiving coming up. Maybe that's a great time to show some gratitude, speak some gratitude, and then also just have some time to rest and recover and relax and focus on yourself. Again, thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to spending additional time with you in the future.